to present the country case for Portugal in terms of the evolution of the payment habits in the country. I guess similar to several other countries, but of course local realities adjust in their own ways when faced with such an unprecedented scenario. And in any case, the timing now is a bit different. There is some evolution. There are a few updates, and we are, of course, monitoring the trends already identified. Well, in earlier months, well, in the harder part of the lockdown period, at least here, and we will continue to do so in terms of seeing about the continuation of these trends, the already identified trends. Anyway, in terms of content, and the same way that was done in the first edition of this webinar, and now again with the very interesting topics for today's panel, and today's panel topic already presented with interesting insights. And from my side now, I will give just a little bit of the European context in the recent evolutions or the recent approach by authorities in terms of this kind of topics and the evolution of retail payments in the European Union, and namely in the Eurozone. And then about the Portuguese situation, we'll cover the evolution of the transactions during the lockdown and after it was, I mean, it started to be gradually, lifted in terms of the main rules, and then the trends and the way ahead. So in terms of the retail payment strategy for the European Union, this was put in public consultation with a very extensive document covering a lot of areas related to retail payments and retail payments evolution in the EU. There were some, some ideas that were stressed by the European Commission when this was launched about the even greater need to have safe and efficient payment systems and payment services to be able to deal with emergency situations such as this COVID-19 outbreak. And of course, the crisis is overall giving a further or a bigger visibility to the digitalization trends of the economy as a whole, and of course of payments in particular. So these were strong ideas put forward by the European Commission when the public consultation was launched earlier this year. We expect to have some initial conclusions in the last quarter. So now I'm sure the colleagues at the European Commission are very busy taking care of the analysis of all the inputs received from a wide range of industry groups and other entities, other stakeholders in this market. And for sure, there will be interesting ideas to move forward and to build inclusive policies aligned with the objectives of the evolution in the EU in this particular area of business. So as a participating country, of course, and this is now already specific for Portugal, there was a significant decline in the retail payments usage, of course, during the lockdown period caused by COVID-19 that was starting, in terms of the official rules of stay-at-home policies and so on. This was between the middle of March and early days of May, of course, with April as the full month with the more significant decreases in this usage, more visible in checks and in payment cards. Being the card the most used payment after cash. So from the cashless instruments, cards are by far the payment instrument with a bigger usage in the country in number of operations, and we saw that when compared with 2019, when the similar periods, clearly the decreases were very, very substantial. The amount spent using cards went down by roughly 10% in March, but anyway, the first half of the month was, let's say, considered as normal or still with activity and stores open, etc. Then started the official lockdown, and then this plummeted to almost 30% of amount spent in April compared with April 2019, and a very small recovery in May. People were still hesitant, and still 21% decrease compared with May 2019. In terms of the number of transactions, this was even more significant. So there were, I mean, as a consequence of the stay at home, there were more situations where people did transactions, but even less transactions, usually of higher average amounts. And again, April was the month with a more visible trend, with almost 43% less card-based transactions, including, of course, all these numbers include POS purchases and the ATM withdrawal. So this is face-to-face transactions, and also including the low-value operations, which are a lot in a number, and mostly in this topic is toll, motorway toll. So as a result of much smaller mobility of the population, so users were not using tolls, of course, and this decrease is also influencing the overall usage of cards. So to have an idea now in more graphic terms, when we consider withdrawals and card-based purchases in amounts, we can see you see the blue area showing the lower usage of cards, clearly marked when compared with the yellow line, which is marking the expected levels that would in principle take place in a normal situation without the pandemics. So clearly lower levels both in cash withdrawals and card-based purchases. Already with some recovery in May, we see that in the beginning of May, some businesses reopened and there was a trend to grow in transactions, but of course still below the expected levels. And in June, with some public holidays and already some more time already passed since the lockdown, the numbers were recovering a little bit. But however, to have an idea of the impacts of this trends and of the behavior of the users, so, and of course with borders closed and with much less mobility, as I was mentioning, but also without any foreign visitors in the country, so there was clearly an impact in the usage of payment instruments. If we see the withdrawals and the card purchases during that specific period between the 19th of March and the 2nd of May, the decrease was 43% compared with 2019. And this, in terms of absolute amounts, in the ATM withdrawals, there were 33 million euros per day withdrawn, less than in the same period of 2019. And in the POS purchases, 54 million euros per day. So this was clearly a big impact, and even there were some contingency measures from the government to to foster the usage of remote channels and so on. But even then, there was this clear trend corresponding to just under 2% of the country's GDP in 2019. It's very, very significant, the impact during that 6-week period. Later on in June, this was a little bit different, still decreasing, but already recovering in part of that more strict lockdown period. In June, the estimation is that this decrease was around 20% for withdrawals and 15% for purchases, which is of course very substantial, but not in the same numbers as during that state of emergency. Moving on, in terms of the sectors, so there were different behaviors, of course, and we can easily understand that the more affected sectors were related to lodging, without tourism, without business travel, just to come back to Sergio's topic. Much less movement in restaurants, with 85% less, and other sectors very, very strongly affected in terms of purchases during the month of April. These are the numbers for April specifically, so the more affected month, with all the sectors here identified in this sample being affected. Retail commerce, meaning supermarkets and similar stores that were kept open during that period, did not suffer as much as others, but we see the purchase of petrol products again because of lower mobility, 60%, with an overall impact in the economy as a whole. We can see then later on, already in June, in the groups, the segments, the economy sectors in the EU as a whole, we already see some different numbers. This is already compared with the pre-pandemics, with February. So the numbers were more significant in some sectors, but numbers were with the worst case around 20% decrease. And so mail orders and internet commerce, the big gainers, the big winners in this, of course, for a bad reason, but with a 17% increase in June compared to February, again due to the lockdown of the population. So in the national community, there were some measures, as was mentioned earlier, in the banks and with us, with the central bank. We had a plan to increase the maximum amount per contactless transaction without PIN to 50 euros. This was 20 euros before, and this was increased to 50 euros. And the contactless payments came to stay. This was increased in the end of March, early April, and clearly this had an impact in terms of usage and in terms of amounts of purchases done contactless, with over 100% growth year on year in the amount spent, and usage of contactless gained ground compared with the face-to-face, with the chip and PIN. I mean, chip and PIN usage of cards, and we could already see that average amounts per transaction were growing significantly, and already in April the average amount per transaction was already above the previous threshold that was applied until March. So it was a quick move, and the users got used to it, and of course merchants as well. And these still low value transactions are more into the habit of being used contactless in the country, similarly to other markets. So this is a very significant trend in retail sector for the point of sale. And of course, together with the growth of contactless, also online transactions, e-commerce transactions were growing as well, with people stay at home. With the stay-at-home policy, people started to buy much more in the internet. And in March, the online purchases increased in Portuguese merchants. So also an interesting trend that people started to buy more online, but with more focus on proximity, in terms of confidence that the goods would be delivered for sure, and with some more reliability with the borders closed, and people tended to buy more locally but online. And at the same time, the transactions in foreign merchants were dropped for the first time in 20 years. So at the same time that the online transactions grew and were more local, the foreign merchants dropped 16% in the month. That it had never happened before since there were records. And in April, this was even more consolidated, with people continuing to buy a lot online, but again, a lot locally. So the online transactions in amount in April peaked in April in terms of the percentage of all the card-based transactions, and online was already almost 11%. And our estimation, and the numbers were not yet closed when I was finishing the slides. The trends for May were estimated to be similar to April for this matter. And further to the usage of contactless, and further to the growth of e-commerce, also the use of instant payments, instant credit transfers, was growing during the lockdown. And again, there had been government measures to facilitate the usage of remote channels, usage of home banking. And as a result, the amount and the value, the amount and the volume, sorry, compared to 2019 of the usage of instant payments was clearly growing, with numbers over 100% growth in March. Then in April, the number of transactions was more than 200% growth compared to the year before, and the amounts were lower, meaning that there were more private customers using this, and not necessarily only businesses, companies using it, as was the trend before. And we see this, that the average value per transaction was in March was over 1,000 euros, and then it came to lower levels due to higher usage by for P2P transactions. So these were the most significant trends identified. So click and go, just and go, and contactless. in the course of the lockdown. Only, of course, only time will tell if this will really consolidate and will continue after the pandemic is over. And I hope as soon as possible, of course, as we all do. But during that specific period, the usage of the retail payment instruments decreased overall. It's now slowly improving. We are already in the end of the summer, and this was a very different summer, thinking of a country that lives a lot from touristic activities, and there were much less tourists or foreign tourists visiting the country. But anyway, the trends are slowly improving in the usage of retail payment instruments, and the trends gain traction in the preference of users to more transactions using contactless, more e-commerce, more instant payments, and decreasing, I mean, the alternatives that were there before. John was mentioning some businesses refusing to accept cash in the US. It's not the case here, but a lot of shops show preference for non-cash usage for cards, much more than before the pandemics, and we will see if this consolidates with time. This was what I had prepared. Of course, you are all always welcome to send questions, always welcome to connect in LinkedIn, and I'm open for questions. Thank you.